Hi, my name is Matt and I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to step 1. At this point, again, I want to make sure that everybody realizes how important it is to attend meetings. Attendance at meetings is very vital to sobriety and maintaining it. The other thing is, if you don't have a book, then you need to get a hold of one. And if you don't have one, then you can find it on the internet and you can start reading it, because the things that I talk about, I reference the Alcoholics Anonymous basic text, which is now in its 4th edition, which was originally written in 1939, like I had mentioned in the introductory part of these videos. The first 164 pages are in its original form from when it was first written, and the things that change are usually at the very beginning, like the introductions and the stories at the end of people's recovery and how they achieved sobriety. But that 164 pages is really the key to this whole program. So the book is very, very important. The chapters are very short. I mean, they're like 14, 15 pages each. They did that on purpose because alcoholics tend to have pretty short attention spans, get bored easily, don't want to read, and all these other things. Okay, so, I mean, 14 pages, come on, you can do that while you're sitting on the can. So, get the book and start reading it. So now, step 1 is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol and that our lives had become unmanageable. So what exactly does that mean? For me, the powerlessness over alcohol was that I couldn't control it, and I couldn't do what I wanted to do anymore, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to keep drinking because I liked the effect that alcohol produced. In the very front part of the book, there's a little segment called the doctor's opinion. Very, very good. In that doctor's opinion, it points out that we alcoholics tend to do certain things, and in the doctor's opinion it writes about the phenomenon of craving and how we develop an allergy to alcohol and we have this craving for alcohol and we drink it and things spiral out of control. And then we get obsessed with the idea that somehow we're going to manage our drinking and that we're going to get things back under control so we can go back to having fun again and get rid of these problems. Well, it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So for me, I had to admit that I had a problem with alcohol, first of all, which was tough because denial was really, really strong for me, because if I didn't want to deal with something, I could find an excuse not to. I could procrastinate it. I could make it somebody else's problem or somebody else's fault. I could do whatever it took to avoid that responsibility and then go drink some more. So it was not surprising that when I got to AA, I didn't have any friends. I'd driven most of my family away. I didn't have anyone real close to me because they became an inconvenience for me, because when my drinking started to get out of control and people started to bring it up, I got rid of them. It's okay. You're a drag. You're messing with my drinking and having fun here. So powerlessness for me meant I could no longer drink alcohol responsibly, because every time I drank, not only did I develop that craving, but I became extremely unpredictable when I drank. And every time I drank, it was a guessing game as to what was going to happen. Sometimes I would drink and I would black out. Sometimes I would drink and not black out. Sometimes I could do 1 or 2 and be okay. And sometimes I would have to have 6 or 7 or 12 or whatever. So each time it became this Russian roulette for me as to what was going to happen. And that was tough, because I was in an organization that did not tolerate that kind of behavior, and it was becoming harder and harder to hide it, and I was getting to the point where I was going to get into some serious trouble if I didn't deal with my problem. So I was exposed to AA a long while back before I stopped drinking. I was exposed to it because it was part of a curriculum, and I had to go to a meeting because it was part of the school I was going through. And so I knew what it was. I just didn't really want to take a look at the possibility I belonged there. But when I came back to AA in 1993, I already kind of knew what I was in for, and I kind of knew what to expect. So before I got into the program, I did what almost every alcoholic does. I tried every imaginable way to manage my drinking and get back to having fun again, because that's what I wanted. But the more I tried, the more my life got unmanageable. And when I mean unmanageable, I mean I couldn't do some of the basic things that most other human beings can do. I had trouble managing my schedule. I had trouble going to the grocery store. I had trouble taking care of my health. I had trouble sleeping. I had trouble with relationships. I had trouble in all of these areas of my life. And yet, I didn't want to stop drinking because I thought somehow, some way, I was going to get back to the way it was when I first started drinking. And as I mentioned in other segments, my life always got worse, never better. So when I did step one, I had a sponsor, and it was basically, I sat down with them, we talked about my story, we talked about his story, and I admitted, yes, I do have a problem with alcohol, my life is unmanageable, and I know right now that I will never be able to drink alcohol again responsibly because I have a disease and it's going to just get worse. And that was basically it to get started. Now, I would recommend, and I've seen it work very well with other people, is to write some things down about what your idea of powerlessness is, what it means to you as far as unmanageability, what are some of the things that you're starting to notice or people have brought up to your attention about your drinking, and start to put the pieces together and start to say, okay, yeah, I can see where alcohol is affecting my life and other people around me, and as much as I would like, the idea of controlling it and managing it is just not going to work. So that's the first part, and that's the only step that, and I've heard a lot of people say, that's the only step you have to do perfectly, because the rest of them are kind of, again, a process, and each person's different. But all of us must get to that point where we realize, yep, I'm beaten down, my situation is hopeless, I can never do this again. And the first part of the book, Bill Wilson's story, he chronologically takes us through what his life was like when he was drinking, and it's pretty hopeless. And when I read his story, and I think, wow, this guy was in pretty bad shape by the time he got sober, it makes my story look pretty dull in comparison. So that part, Bill's story is the first chapter, and that's, again, a key point to read. And then in the second chapter, it starts to talk about some of the symptoms and some of the other things that we start to see, and why it's so important that we get to the point where we realize that we absolutely must get rid of any doubts or any sneaky notion that, I'm just going to come into this program and I'm going to learn how to manage my drinking so that when I get to a point and I start to feel better, I can just have a couple drinks now and then. It's been my experience, and I've watched many other people, that it just doesn't work that way. So again, got to be honest with yourself and concede. In the book, it very, very specifically says we must concede to our innermost selves that we are alcoholic, and that's the first step in the recovery process. The first step of the AA program is what we just talked about, admitting we're powerless over alcohol and that our lives have become unmanageable. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. So again, I highly recommend you write it down and start to write down these things as we go through these steps and keep it in a safe place for two reasons. The first reason is because it helps get some clarity of thought. Put it out on paper, get it out of your head, and start to get it out on paper. And it also serves as chronological history so that as we go through each step and we start to write things down, we start to see patterns, we start to pick things out that we can start to put together, and each step builds on the other one. And as we write these things down, we can start to see progress, because years down the road, you pull out your journals and you read some of the things that were bothering you or some of the problems that you were having at the time. You may find that they're no longer a problem, and things have started to take care of themselves, and sometimes you don't even know how it happened, but that's okay. It's good to be able to see that progress, because it gives us hope as we continue through these steps. So again, welcome. And again, I cannot stress enough, go to meetings. If you can get to one a day, that would be great. If you can't, get in as many as you can. And I know you're busy, and we all have schedules, and we all have things going on, but you got to make time for this because this is really important. So in the next video, we're going to talk about step 2, and look forward to seeing you there.